My name is John, and he calls me Johnny, and this is just going to be my testimony of how I came to Christ. So I grew up in a Catholic family. As the years progressed on, my parents ended up getting a divorce. That kind of started this whole spiral effect in my life. I quickly came to the assumption, because of all the trauma that I had in my life, the abuse as a kid, the neglect, my parents splitting up, being left to our own devices, and that God must not be real. And after many years of aggressive partying, trying to escape my anxiety, my depression, all the problems that I had, that addiction became all-consuming. It led me down a very depraved, sinful, dark path, a wicked path. By the age of 17, I had developed a stomach ulcer from the amount of substances I was abusing. Shortly after that, I had my death experience. What happened was so profound that it shook my understanding of the nature of reality and the way I was gonna think about things from that point on. I was staying with my father at the time. After about a 4-day bender, my body began to shut down. I remember them dropping me off at his apartment. I would hold on to my keys so they wouldn't jingle as I would tiptoe towards the door of the house. But what I had noticed from this bender of partying, that I had taken too much, and my body began to tremble and shake. And as I went to grab my keys and quiet them, they were making a lot of noise. They were being agitated by the tremors that my hands were experiencing. I remember trying to grab the door so that I wouldn't rattle the door. The whole door begins to bounce inside of the threshold, rattling even more so. I had turned the key and the door had swung open, and that's the last thing I remember was falling and hitting the ground. And then that's when everything went black. And I'm in this blackness, this darkness, and there's nothing around. I was in this state of relief, like the weight of the world had been lifted off of my shoulders. I could finally rest for a moment. And then off in the distance, I see this faint light, this little tiny, almost like you couldn't make it out, star in the night sky. And this little tiny, small, faint light is glowing, and it's getting a little bit brighter and brighter, almost twinkling. And then that light begins to become a vertical, elongated line, and that line begins walking towards me as the figure of a man. And it's interesting because as I'm looking at that light, I begin feeling like this euphoric feeling. As the line gets bigger and bigger and it's the figure of a person walking and walking, what I see is all of the creation behind this person. I would hear the laughter of children as he's walking at me, and I see the heavens and the earth, and I see trees and birds singing, and all the beauty that's found in nature. It's all brought with him. He's the one who keeps it all in balance, and it's unmistakable that it's God. As he was coming at me, that feeling of euphoria started to turn to dread. I felt as if I was so bad that it would almost be criminal to be in the presence of God. And so I began to think of myself really poorly, and I needed to get away from him. So as I go to turn away from him, I just hear him say to me, "That's not why I'm here." All the shame and guilt and conviction that I was feeling for all the things that I had previously never had a problem with, but now in the presence of God, I was experiencing. It's just like he washed all away. It wasn't until many years later that I would read the Gospel according to Mark, and it talks about the transfiguration. And they said that Jesus's face was transfigured and it shone. It was like the sun. When I read that, it just about jumped off the page at me. Is that what I saw? Because when I saw Jesus, he wasn't looking at a man, even though I could see his beard, his hair, his facial features. It was like he himself is the substance of light. He stops a few feet away from me, maybe 10, 15 feet away from me, maybe less than that. And he puts his hand out to me. He just says this, "You can either come with me," puts his hand down and he points over my shoulder. He doesn't say a word now. When I look over my shoulder and it's the darkness, it's the cold, I spun around as fast as I could, and no sooner did I reach for him to grab a hold of him, I'm right back where I started in the blackness, and he's not there anymore. Oh my gosh, am I not going with him? It was pretty horrific to have that feeling of loneliness, oh no. And then I hear this low bass rumble sort of sound, and then I hear it again, and it gets louder and louder and louder. And then I just hear it, "John, John." And I just remember opening up my eyes, and I just see my father shaking me violently and beating on my chest and crying and screaming my name, John. With that experience, it was it codified that God exists. And for many, many years after that experience, it wasn't I just became a good person all of a sudden and gave my life to Christ. God left me this little breadcrumb trail, right? Piece by piece by piece. And then my father ended up dying, which really deeply affected me. Me and my wife, we had just purchased our home. We talked about once we get settled in, we'll look for a local church and we'll go to get my young daughters baptized. And I wanted them to do it because they wanted to do it, not because I wanted them to do it. But Grandpa thought it would be a good idea for you. Do you understand? And one of my friends, he was like, "Hey dude, you should totally check out this church that I've been going to. It's called Thrive. I think you'd really like it." Unbeknownst to me, one of my wife's best friends started posting on her social media sermons from you. For me, it was okay, this can't be an accident. So we decided we're gonna go check it out. It was Judah was talking to me and my wife, and I was just blown away. I was almost brought to the point of tears, and I look over, my wife is too. Then the sermon ends, and I just get up, I look at my wife, and I'm like, "What'd you think?" And she just gave me this look how could he know about our lives like that? Then we go pick up our kids. Kids are like, "Oh, it was amazing." And they say, "Can we come back?" And then we get in the car. I'm thinking to myself, what just happened? So we go back, and I believe it was Matt Carlick who goes up on stage. So Royal Rangers, we're having baptisms coming up, and I'm just like, what is happening here? Like, God is like laying this out perfect. My girls go to get baptized. The next time baptisms came around, my wife was talking about how she wanted to be baptized, and we got to do it together. I remember Judas, he says to me, I might have to hold you under the water for a little bit longer than normal. I said, you hold me under that water as long as you need to. And then Judah just, busts out laughing. God will put people in your life at the right time to plant a seed, and another person will water it, the scriptures talk about. Another person will come and collect the harvest. And it's like, you kind of have to pay attention to what God is doing, because God is taking us from death to life for sure.